5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Bren, stop supping and go. We're doing the Atlanta Reign, Bren.
Hints of a 2021 team preview in the form of the Atlanta Reign.
What an odd flavor of tea.
Wow, yeah, it tastes of 2020's overhype. And hopefully this year will be better because I've just got the 2021 batch coming in and it's here right now. Starting with the Atlanta Reign. This is a team that honestly has not made many changes. You look at this roster and it's largely stayed the same. From top to bottom here, they've only made a couple of new additions, and the most recent of them being, of course, Kai, who has come over from the Valiant squad. Sharp ended up getting let go, and Kai will be taking place. If you don't know who Kai is, it's KSP. I can call him Kai because we're cool like that. And he's going to be taking
pro players, but it's nothing to him.
He's going to be taking over the hit scan duties, essentially, of this team. And I mean, it's a hell of an upgrade. I'm not going to lie. Out of a lot of the hit scan players, I think KSP really shone last year. Out of a lot of them, especially on the Ashe when Ashe was being played so much during the hero pools.
Yeah. Is it wrong to say I really like? I mean, starting off obviously KSP is an addition, but like this DPS trio of Pelican, KSP, and Edison should be really, really good.
Yeah, it should be unbelievably good. What are you giggling about, Jonathan?
What's so funny?
I did my research as well. And yeah, I guess the only way to describe it is, so The Ringer is like a content network that does like their own shows like that and stuff as well. Yeah. They have like an NBA segment, and they call it the support group. And essentially, people who come on and they talk about basketball players or like teams that they like have put faith in, that they bought the stock, quote unquote, and they're still holding on to it, believing in that player, and it just never happens. That's how I feel about the Atlanta Reign. Like, I should be in the support group for Atlanta Reign. Because just as Matt said, he's like, I really like this DPS trio. Like, I sat the entire time I was researching this team, and I was like, I like this. Yeah. But then, like, when you talk about the Atlanta Reign, everyone just goes crazy because they're like, this should be this roster that just like performs and it's like really good. But then you're like, they're not getting the results. And like everyone's really disappointed and down on them. But like, I should be a Atlanta Reign support person.
Perhaps instead of, in order to guide you through this guided therapy session, Reinforce, instead of starting with the new additions, maybe we start with the past and just dig up the trauma from Reinforce's history with the Atlanta Reign. Because I think we rated this team at the 4th position in 2020.
Really?
I think it was something like that.
Probably, yeah.
Because, all right, you gotta remember, right? They have Massa, who performed extremely well in the season before. They have a tank duo fresh out of contenders who look really good. Like, Atlanta Academy overperformed everybody's Oh my God, we had them at number 3.
Oh my God.
Oh my God, we had them at number 3. Okay, but wait.
Me and Bren were not associated with this. Me and Bren did not. You see, Custa, Reinforce, Sideshow, not Bren.
Josh Hare speaks for itself.
But I mean, look at me. What a shambolic state. I'm not in a much better state right now, am I?
You've gone for the Overwatch 2 hero upgrade look, where you've just grown facial hair. You've called it a day.
The hero upgrade. This is Josh on the new engine. He's got more polygons in his body.
New Sideshow Pog.
Let me sniff my copium some more. Yeah. We were really high on the tanks, Gator and Hawk, because they had overperformed everyone's expectations for a Western squad in the gauntlet, right? They were beating up teams that made it to the finals, sicko tank line, competing with the absolute best in the tier 2 level. And then you have the DPS, and Brad, the head coach of Selfless, and then of the Atlanta Reign, has always had an eye for DPS talent. I mean, everything else has been a little all over the place, but the man can pick people who shoot good. He's extremely good at that. And last season, who did they have? They had Baby Bay. They had Edison. No, wait. Yeah, did they have Edison from the beginning?
Yeah, Edison.
Yeah,
and
Erster. Yeah. Edison and Erster is...
I mean, we were...
theoretically an unbelievable team.
Yeah, the amount of times we were bigging this up. I mean, you go back to the old 2020 preview articles. that we wrote or that we said our piece for, a lot of us had. Who was it?
Edison as rookie of the year.
Edison as rookie of the year, right?
I think we had like 4 out of 5 of us had Edison as rookie of the year.
Some people had Atlanta as like winning.
Yeah.
The entirety of the North American side.
I know that Avast had Atlanta at number 2 in 2020. And
oh my God.
We were like, we're not quite as high as Avast is on Atlanta. We have them at number 3. And then like they just couldn't get it together.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good place to begin with when we talk about this team is what went wrong in 2020 and have they actually fixed that?
You didn't even mention Sharp, which I'm like, cool.
Yeah.
But I'm like, at this point, I let's just cover Sharp for like 10 seconds of this video, and then we can never mention him ever again. But like, I'm at the point now where like,
poor boy.
that was incredible. But like, I'm at the point now where I'm like questioning like my own intelligence. Like, I'm the Seymour meme, you know, like, are the kids wrong? It's like, or like, am I wrong? Or like, no, it's the kids who are wrong. You know, that's how I feel about Sharp at this point. It's like, I thought so highly of him, and now I feel like I'm wrong because he never got playtime. And I'm like, was I really that, like, was I supposed to be that high on Sharp or like whatever? Like, that's where I am. Like, I mean, the support group for Sharp too. Like, it's just unbelievable, this team, how much trauma they've created to me.
Yeah, I think, though, that Sharp was put in a tough position because he was competing with Edison and Babybay for those positions. Like, Sharp was the best tracer from that crop of European contenders' talent that year. And he just didn't really get an opportunity to show that because they had Edison on the roster. And I also think it's really hard for rookie tracer talent to come in and compete with the like vets. A lot of these players are not like, I don't know, they're just not unbelievable all-stars. I think Shax is a real outlier in that sense, that he was able to come in. I suppose Yaki as well, though, was incredibly good. But a lot of like the striker and the former like Sabiobi, but I suppose Prophet now and stuff like that, and Fleder, like the tracer role is really dominated by veterans rather than rookies a lot of the time.
Let's put it this way. I mean, that's why it was so ironic when Kai got picked up by Atlanta Reign, because I think he essentially fills the same role as Sharp. And, you know, but I think that Kai now is more proven. You know, obviously had a fantastic year with the LA Valiant, and just like essential Overwatch League player, like is going to be pivotal for this team. So I just thought it was ironic that they just replaced Sharp with essentially a player that is similar, but is proven to be better. I don't know where I'm going with this, but I think let's not talk about Sharp anymore. People hate when I talk about Sharp because I talk about Sharp all the time. That's the end of it. He's not even in the league anymore. I will never talk about Sharp again, okay? Until he's back.
That's quite sad. I thought Sharp was good.
I mean, when you look at the team, what did they get right last year? I thought Edison was really good. Although I think probably some of his like rookie of the year hype and some of the other things like that got lost in just how disappointing the team was. But like he was a very strong player. I also think I still think Masa is really good. I also thought Babybay had a great year, but obviously Babybay not there anymore. He's playing Valorant. I think though we still have the same tank line, which at times looked really good. Like Double Shield, they were good. And then some other comps they didn't really excel or look the best at. And then I just don't think we've seen enough of Iris.
Well, with this team, I was never particularly hot on a tank line coming into this year.
Coming into this year? Or
sorry,
last year?
Into last year.
Right.
I was the outlier in that regard. But what I will say is I'm willing to give them a bit of a second pass of things. And I bring this up a lot regarding the overall season, the way it went, I guess. But it was a tough year last year. And the expectations were a little bit weird. It was all over the place. I imagine it wasn't the best environment to try and play in as well. So this year, this time around, I'm assuming that Atlanta Reign have done what they can. They've done trialing processes. They've looked at outside talent. And I'm assuming that Hawk and Gator have come out on top once again, like that they are earning their spot here.
I think that's a big assumption, actually.
You don't think that they would have done much scouting outside of that fact?
No, I think if you have no intentions of upgrading a position or spending money to look at a position, I don't think teams always run an extensive trial process to see whether their position could be upgraded.
Sure.
I don't think so. When you talk about people like Dan, for example, for Paris, there was a big open trial system. He proved himself and went through. And a lot of his reputation is staked on the fact that he did well in trials, not necessarily in matches. But not every team conducts extensive, elaborate open trials when it comes to their off-season. So unless there's some specific info that Atlanta did do that, I don't think you can assume they did, because there was no indication from the outside that they did anything this off-season with their tanks and their supports.
I'm going to ignore that then. I'm not going to make the claim that they've been shopping for outside tanks and that they've earned their place. But even still, I will say that the expectations that were set upon this team last year were too high. I mean, that's the approach that we've all gone for here.
Sure.
And that can weigh heavily into a team's performance, especially like Hawk and Gator as a tank line coming into the season. Like, we're putting them up there with some real veteran talents last year. And I think this year, if we all have a managed expectation of where this team should be, like an actual... I mean, here's the thing. I'm looking at this overall roster. I'm not particularly sold on it. The DPS line, I think, is the best part of this roster. Absolutely. But overall, I'm not a huge fan of it. They haven't made upgrades where I think that they should have. Even still, hopefully, now that we are setting these expectations much lower this year, maybe then, now that they're going to be using this year to actually settle into that role and maybe punch higher.
So can I ask you a question then? Since, it's worth talking about the tanks, back to the tanks. Can I ask you a question then? Where do you guys stand on Gator and Hawk, like in the league, their talent? Because the way I see it, and I'm curious about your thoughts on this as well, because maybe my assessment is wrong here. I've been reading, social media and stuff as well, and like some people are really down on them, and they're saying like, like they're probably like bottom in the league in terms of tank talent and stuff like that. I think sometimes it's pretty easy to tell, and I'm not gonna name names, but like you can tell when like someone's on their way out of the league, or like they probably don't have it, and they have a hard time keeping up. I know that they struggled last year, but Gator and Hawk, they don't give me those kind of vibes. Like, I've not given up to them, and this is sort of like this like kind of like support group argument for me, is that I'm still stuck in this trap where I've not given up on Gator and Hawk, because they didn't have their best season last year, and they had like huge expectations on their shoulders going into the league, but I still feel like they have the potential to turn it around. Like, I'm not out on Gator and Hawk as a duo. Like, I don't think that I'm not saying that like they should probably not be an owl. They should go back to contenders. Like, I actually think that they are capable Overwatch League players, and they have the potential. I just think that last year, for a bunch of reasons we're going to talk about, it was just not like the best environment and the best situation for them to succeed within this team. But I do still think that Gator and Hawk have this year now to prove themselves, and I do think that they do have it. Are they going to succeed, and are they going to be great this year? I don't know. I mean, we'll have to find out, right? But I've not given up on them. I do think that they still have potential.
Well, I want to add on to that by saying that I think it's a good thing that you've pointed out, like this kind of feeling of players that are slipping out of the league. You know what I mean? Where they are just not really keeping up with the rest of the talent that's coming in, and that's a vibe I had for Soon, actually. In 2019 when he was on the Paris team. And it wasn't until that the Paris team got the outside structure coming in that helped develop all the players on Paris Eternal that I thought, okay, Soon's still got it in him. He's still a really good player. But outside of that, I was never too hot on him. That's the biggest example that kind of mirrors this. Now, the difference here is I don't have that much faith in this coaching structure.
That's exactly what I'm about to bring up, Bren. I knew we were about to go there, and I knew it was going to set Bren off. But I think the crux of the entirety of the Atlanta Reigns issues last year did not come down to player talent. There were certain positions you could upgrade, there's certain fingers you could point, but at the end of the day, when you look at all of the VODs of Atlanta Reign losing, it's against teams that are... They are the true gatekeepers of the 2020 season, in that their player talent is enough to beat all of the bottom level teams that don't know how to play the game properly. But as soon as they go up against the tier 1 or tier 1.5 teams who actually understand how the meta works, and they've got teamwork, and they have like a set plan of how they want to take the fight properly, and they know how to execute it, Atlanta Reign can't hang with those teams. And I think a lot of that comes down to the coaching aspect of it. When I look at this team and I think about Gator and Hawk, I think that Jonathan's right. You shouldn't give up on this squad. Yeah. They looked good in contenders. they look like they still have potential to be good now, but they've never realized any of their potential. And I think you have to say that the coaching staff of the Atlanta Reign has not been an elite coaching staff. They might be decent. They might have some good parts to them or whatever. They've worked in the past with some people who've been pretty highly rated by individuals. But as a whole, they have not managed to get value out of the team that they've had. And I think it's not just about some like vague concept of value, like you weren't able to make Gator and Hawk into superstars. You can look at just the raw team fights that they were taking. They were taking them worse than the other top teams. Not the players making decisions, but the way that they all meshed together, and the plan and the idea that they had about how the comp worked was worse. And they were just beating teams by having like Baby Bay hit a bunch of headshots against them or brute forcing shit. And that doesn't win you championships at all. Every good team in Overwatch has a good coaching staff, and I think Atlanta Reign, that's the glaring issue for them, that they still haven't fixed the season. They've just patched it up with new and flashier DPS players.
Oh, yeah, I mean, when Johnny made the point about Gator and Hawk, and you as well, I feel the same way. Like when I watch them, they're not bad. Like, and they don't strike you as players, like Johnny said, who are like on the way out. It just seems like this team, I feel like, really just got by off of like individual skill last year. And that's why they're able to beat all of the teams below them. And then they struggle against the top teams, right? Because that's like the real difference between, the middle of the pack and then the real top. I think though, like, yeah, if you give Gator and Hawk more time to develop and you kind of like give them like harder coaching and, really kind of go into it with them, I still think they can be really good players in the Overwatch League.
Yeah. So did you want to talk about the coaching staff? Because I mean, I think we have to address it more thoroughly as well. That I think, to Joshua's point, I mean, I don't want to talk ill about Brad as well, because he's an incredible stand-up guy, and I've had the pleasure of talking to him like privately, actually, at length about their season last year. He should be a general manager. Like he is fantastic at team building and spotting like individual talent and like players that have the talent and are stand-up guys and like
and
building
looking
rosters
after the
like
talent that he has,
and looking after them. He cares so much about these players. Like, just speaking with him, you like. Okay, I was about to say that they're like his kids, but they're really not. That was a bit hyperbole. Hyperbole. But like, he cares so much about these players, right? But I think he should be a GM, and I think it's unfair almost of me to say that on a podcast like this, because I don't have any insight on the organization. Like. How it works, right? How those kind of responsibilities work, like behind closed doors. So I feel a bit bad like bringing this up now, but like after speaking to Brad and seeing his work in the Overwatch League as well, I think his achievements speak for themselves. He is great, as you said. Like, he is great at spotting talent, and I think he deserves to be promoted to a general manager role. And as you said, Josh, I think that would free up some space to actually get some proper like new coaches and a new kind of dynamic within this team. Because even dating back to when Matt brought up like Baby Bay and like relying on them to hit shots and stuff, like I'm very happy that they're sort of like moving away from that, because yes, that was a great time to be an Atlanta Reign fan and like going back to Dafran, and like you had this like very cool brand, you had like awesome players on your team. Yeah, like Baby Bay and the Fran, and like Dogman was on there, like talking trash and having a time of his life. Like very, very cool personalities on that team. But if this team really wants to succeed, I think they have to get back to the whetstone a little bit and just like grind Overwatch and try to be the very best. And I think that's a different mentality from, hey, is Baby Bay having an on and off day today? Because he is a little bit streaky. And, I think he'll probably even admit to that a little bit. Like, he was a bit streaky at times. Like, sometimes he hits and sometimes he doesn't. And I think moving away from that is going to be good for this team, because they can now just, like, slow down a little bit in, like, social media exposure and instead just care about the performance. How do we get the best out of this group of players? And I think that's going to help this team a little bit. But I do think that they need some additions to the coaching staff to do so, because we've seen some great talent coming into the league in terms of coaching staffs, and I think the Atlanta Reign needs a new coach.
Even to just see in addition to the coaching staff to probably take some pressure off of Brad, because I assume he's also like kind of like a de facto like general manager, as Siri just kind of looks on. I assume, like you guys mentioned, like he's obviously done a great job of taking care of players, finding new talent. I'm sure he's probably doing multiple things for this organization.
Oh
Yes. He wears many hats.
Like, yeah, that like there's probably times where it's hard for him to focus on the coaching aspect of it. So like, and maybe they need somebody to kind of just another body to like ease it up a little bit, right? For him to really kind of focus down.
But I think they've also
get a whole year of doing that.
A lot of the people that they've had that were highly talked about within the scene, like I believe, I could be wrong here because I'm trying to pull this off the top of my head, but they've previously worked with Casaurus and Mentalist, right? Both of whom, is that right?
Yeah.
And Silence.
Right.
To a degree.
And I can't remember about Silence, but I know that people were talking very highly of Casaurus and Mentalist. And I think that one of the issues, though, is that both of those guys, I believe, are quite detail-focused. And I think what they seem to be lacking is an overall alpha vision guy. Like one of the head coaches that's going to come in and mold the team. They're not picking at the tiny little details and trying to make the players better, but actually come in and say, hey, we've got this meta. We want to play in this kind of way and provide a direction for the team. Because they seemed very... The players, when they talked in interviews and when they talked about afterwards, they'd always use really vague terms like, yeah, we just can't click. We haven't clicked yet. When people talk like that, when players talk like that, it grinds my gears because it's like they don't know what the issue is. So they're using these vague terms and they're trying to figure out what the issue is, but they need someone to come in and address the core problems and kind of provide that perspective so that the players can do their stuff. And I don't think the Atlanta Reign have ever had a dynamic that works with their team that does that. And I don't think that this season is going to be any different.
It's hard to find somebody like that, though. Like,
it is.
People like that are not laying around. And then I would also say, as your roster, it's kind of odd. Like, as your roster gets better, the level of like alpha and trust that person would need to have gets even higher than that roster, right? Like they could be a really alpha, good coach, know exactly what it is, but like if you have a top-notch roster and they kind of believe they're above you, like that's not gonna work.
Yeah, but I don't think that exists anymore in Overwatch because
maybe not.
It's just been proven time and time again at this point that coaches make rosters. I mean, you got Pelican and the huge amount of success he's had. You got Krusty and the huge amount of success he's had. You got Moon and the huge amount of success that he's had. You got 9K and the huge amount of success that he's had on the previous team. You got Rush in a position now to really prove himself outside of being conjoined to 9K, although he's previously had success on Element Mystic. There's so many head coaches in the scene now over the last essentially like maybe 1.5 years that have blossomed and come out. A lot of them underneath Krusty, by the way, from the San Francisco Shock. But there's been a renaissance in coaching within the Overwatch scene. And Atlanta Reign have missed it completely. They've utterly missed it. In terms of
it's hard to get one of those guys, right?
Yeah, I mean, unless you're willing to buy one of them in the off-season, of which, some of them were on the market, but they didn't snap them up. Trying to develop your own person there is really hard. It's easier to pick someone else up. Well, I say easier. It costs more, and you have to attract them to want to work with the roster in the first place. But trying to grab one of those people is, I think, almost a necessity for Atlanta Reign to reach their potential, and they haven't done that this year.
But what I don't want us to come away from this saying is that, like, there's a very few select people like that. It's like, yeah, at the very top tier peak, but there's still like other names like Arachne, who used to work for the San Francisco Shock and is now the coach of Guangzhou Charge. He had great success with Talon. You had someone like even like Spaso, who also worked for Talon and had like good success with Talon as well. But it's like
Laurie for O2 Blast, who's come in to coach Boston. But these are names that haven't been tested within Overwatch League.
Yes. Sure, but you have to take a shot. You
gotta take a risk. And
you gotta take a risk if you actually want that, right? So
they're not taking risks. With their coaching structure, they're not taking
I think
risks.
it's easier to say that, though, from the position where we are, where if you're like the organization, like Brad is an essential part of that organization, right? Like
I mean, that's why I'm sitting here saying he should get promoted. I'm not saying Brad should get fired because I love Brad and he's awesome and he should stay with the organization. I'm saying they should promote Brad, give him more money for all that it's worth, and then hire a new coach.
Even if they don't have like a promotion aspect. Houston currently has 2 co-head coaches because they have Harsha, who has a lot of the experience, and I believe is not entirely like Brad's side of it, but I think works more in the managerial and logistical side of it than just a purely strategic head coach would.
I mean, he kind of did almost everything when he was with the Vancouver Titans.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that they've now added, Junkbuck onto that team to be co-head coaches so that they can collaborate on the strategic side, but also Harsha gets some of the responsibility lifted off his shoulders to work on the more managerial aspect with Cool Matt too. And I think that kind of system is something that could work for the Atlanta Reign if they were willing to implement it.
Yeah.
And it seems like they haven't gone that direction, and that worries me.
There are people out there. You got to take risks, though. And yeah, I think we're all in rough agreement of this, that this is going to be one of the major fault points now for the Atlanta Reign moving forward. At least this is my viewpoint. I think, yeah, it's just going to be a repeat of history if they don't shore up the structure that's behind these players, because the players have potential. And if I'm going to go over the list of players here, I've got no issues whatsoever with the DPS line. I know Pelican is a fantastic player. I know Kai is a fantastic player. I know Edison is a fantastic player.
Wait there.
This DPS line.
Wait there. Do they have the potential to be the best DPS line in the league?
There's a world where I could see it.
Yeah.
As much as that sounds crazy, that sounds bonkers when we've just been absolutely slamming this team for their poor performances, how some of us are expecting that to continue in 2021. There's a world there because we know the consistency is not a problem with Kai.
No.
He is consistent and he is insanely good. Yeah. Pelican, we've seen some of his game tape previously coming into this. We already know what to expect from him as well. From when he performed in the Valiant Winter Ball, he looked like the best piece of the Atlanta Reign.
Yeah, he did.
Like he looked like the best piece. We know what to expect from these players, alongside Edison as well, to fill in any sort of gaps. This team should be meta-proof in the DPS department. They have the potential to be there. But I just don't think that potential will ever be met.
Don't sell San Francisco and Washington short.
Exactly.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna be the guy who says, hold your horses. They have a slight chance of being the best DPS line now.
It's really hard to overtake San Francisco and Washington. And also, I mean, there's a bunch of other teams that might be punting for it. But what I think you can say is that the DPS line is almost impossible for this DPS line to be the part that lets you down. Against anyone.
It's not going to be a DPS.
If this DPS line went up against whoever you thought was the best, San Francisco, Washington, whoever the hell you think is the best watching at home, they're going to be able to hold their own or maybe even beat them.
Yeah. Looking at this roster, though, I'm looking at the tank line. I didn't have too much faith in them last year. I hope that the minimized expectations this year will help them grow as players as well. And hopefully they will continue to grow where previously we've seen potential. It wasn't really met. The support line, I don't know really. Iris, I'll have to wait and see how this turns out in terms of a pickup.
Do you mean LR15?
LR15, yep. Or Iris.
Yeah, or Iris, yeah.
Iris, I have to wait and see, honestly, because I feel like he's coming into a hotly contested role, but his partner in crime, Massa, has had many years to prove himself. And I'd say that Massa, I think, showed a lot of potential in the first year that he was coming out in 2019. But since then, again, hasn't really been met. My PC is about to die. But this team's roster, the failures, I cannot hammer it home enough. I feel like the failures of this roster will not come from the players. It will come from the way those players are pointed at, in the direction that they are pointed at by the people behind them, who are supposed to be leading them and giving them this overarching plan on a day-to-day basis. That's where these issues are going to be coming from. Until Atlanta pick up some...
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say proven. I just want them to take some risks now with the coaching staff, because I think they need to do it. From contenders, maybe some up-and-coming coach that's had some previous experience. I haven't been scouting out coaches in contenders. I don't know who they should be picking up. I don't know those names. But there are up-and-coming talent in those roles that is unproven. You're taking a risk. But when I look at our coaching staff right now, they haven't taken any risks. They're running with the same old. These people have been in the league for quite some time, and they haven't seen results from them.
So here's where, to kind of show the other side of doom and gloom, right? Obviously the other rosters in NA and just the league in general have improved, right? This DPS line is probably good enough to keep you in most games. Like you're not going to get just like your DPS line's not just going to get crushed in these games. You have at least a very, a very good, main support. Like if the tanks just up their game a little bit, like are they in the same? They're almost in the same spot as they were last year. Like gatekeepers could be like on a day could have their DPS turn up and things click and beat a top team.
It's
like,
possible. Yeah, go on.
When you're in that position, like you're in, let's say, 5th in NA, right? Where I think they were like last year or somewhere around there. You need like out of those like games where you need to turn up and like win them, like you win like, 3 of those, 2 of those, like, now you're looking at like 4th place or 3rd place. Like you're not that far. Like for as much as like we've kind of said, like, oh my God, it's like terrible, like the sky is falling down. Like they're not as far away, maybe, like not from winning. Like I think they're far away from that. But being super competitive, like would they finish in the top 6 in NA in like a stage? Like I think so. Like I think they definitely can contend for stuff like that.
I
that
think
should be like the minimum, right?
Every single tournament, they're going to be hunting for one of the seeds to get into the playoff, for the tournament, right? For like the playoff to get into Hawaii, they're gonna be hunting for that. Like I think they're gonna be mega competitive for those 6th, 5th kind of spots. Every time they're probably gonna have a chance. They're gonna have like one key game against a tier 1 opponent that is the decider as to whether or not they get in, and then it's down to actually whether or not they perform in those games. What happened last year was exceptionally consistent failure to perform against tier 1 and exceptionally consistent domination of the lower teams. It was almost comical how perfectly they defined their role as the gatekeepers. That it probably isn't going to happen again next year in the same way. Like that was almost too cliche what happened in 2020. Very rarely do the gatekeeper teams actually have perfect records against the bottom and perfect losses against the top.
And you've also got a lot of teams making upgrades and taking risks with their own structure.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Consistency could be a positive for them this season. Like I could see some of the teams that have made a lot of risks this year ending up flopping that were trying to go for the top. Are there a couple of metas where the Dallas Fuel could completely plank? Yeah, I could totally see that. Are there a couple of metas where I could see Houston completely planking? Yeah, for sure. Toronto's taken a lot of risks with the kind of stuff that they've put together. So it's incredibly variable how a lot of these teams will play. And if Atlanta can maintain consistency throughout, who knows what they could get at one point when more teams flop than make it.
Well, here's like just to kind of set an example, right? Like, for the NA playoffs last year, for the finals, as Hugo now goes on his toy monkey spree, the Shock obviously got first in NA. You had the Fusion, who are now in APAC. And then you had the Justice at 3 and Florida at 4, and then Atlanta right at 5. Like, Florida's made some big changes, which we aren't sure about, right? Washington has made some changes that you think they'll stay up there. Right underneath the Atlanta Reign was the Valiant. They're not here anymore, right? And then you have Gladiators in Paris, where Paris has blown their team up. You have some teams that have gotten better underneath there, like Toronto and Dallas. But that still kind of leaves like, a Florida, Atlanta, Toronto, like maybe Boston and Houston. Like there's still possibilities they find themselves in like the 4th, 5th game, like trying to get in and that type of scenario. Like I think their DPS is just so strong compared to some of those other teams in that bracket that they'll have an advantage in that scenario.
It will keep them in, for sure. Like, it will keep them in. I want to start applying some arbitrary ranking as well to these teams.
Love it.
Because, for me, I think this team lives and breathes the C tier. They will always sail the 7 seas. This team is destined. Like,
and specifically, we're talking across the whole of Overwatch.
Like Davy Jones, they are just going to be on the sea for always, forevermore. I cannot see this team breaking out unless they make some radical changes. Like, unless they absolutely revitalize their player roster. But even still, I stand by the point that I don't think the players are going to be my major issue with this team moving forward. It's going to be in the structure. I'm not going to say it again because I've been going on and on and on about this point. But yeah, I think a firm C
Yeah. I'm going to say within North America, they get a B-. But unfortunately, as that extends to the entire league, you do end up dropping to the C tier. Yeah. Because I think that...
Even in North America, I don't know. I don't see it. I think at best, they're not punching it. They're like, this team could fail to punch into the mid-tier at best. And at worst, it could be real bad.
I don't think
I think you're kind of going a little bit overboard there, but
maybe.
Do you think the downsides of this team could ever see them towards like the bottom 5? Well, actually, there's only bottom 5 in the league. Yeah,
I think this team might mirror the Dallas Fuel of last year.
I
think they will mirror the Dallas Fuel of last year. That's where I expected to see this team.
Spicy take.
I don't think it's spicy at all.
That is I think
I see so many parallels.
Why?
I see so many fucking parallels.
Okay.
The coaching staff, for one. The superstar DPS players that both these teams have.
Okay.
And this kind of like, okay, they've got some veteran talent, but they've never really achieved much in the other roles.
I don't know anything about Pelican, but I don't see any world in which like Kai or Edison decide to, where they get
No. I don't think this team's going to blow up because of the DPS.
Right.
But I think the most they can hope for is the DPS really dragging this team up along with them. Yeah. And the issues that they're going to be suffering from, I'm not saying they're going to have a decay thing where the team's going to blow up. But what I do see is this team suffering from the exact same problems that the Dallas Fuel did. Outside of that.
Spicy take.
I am closer to where Josh is to where I believe.
Fucking, mate, bro, at me when this happens. I'm telling you.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you will sound prescient.
I believe they're like in the overall sense of the league, they're a C tier team. If you Josh talked about NA, they're a B tier. But I think it's a team that is very, like, I guess you would kind of call it volatile in the sense that I could easily see this going way better than I think, right? If I know the tank line is kind of evolved since last season and Iris is a little bit better, where maybe he more playtime makes him look better. And the DPS turn up, I could see it probably being a little bit better than I would have expected. And I think a lot of people, I could also see it going the other way, not as far as Bren is saying, but I can see them ending up in the same spot, maybe even a little bit like lower than what they were last year, where maybe, instead of being the gatekeepers, they lose to the top teams and then even like splitting games with the mid-tier teams, right?
Yeah,
so
that could happen. What do you think, Jonathan?
As a member of the Atlanta Reign support group.
Yeah, how's the copium feeling?
And I'm not a simp, okay? I just want to make that clear. I'm not a simp. I'm not a fan of the Atlanta Reign. I could give a fuck how well the organization does. Okay? The difference here is I'm part of the support group because I think there's talent here and I think there's potential here. And if it does not come into fruition, I'm wrong about judging these players individually. Okay? That's the difference, okay? So I'm not an Atlanta Reign fan. I just believe in the players and the skill they have.
That's actually quite interesting. Do you think that's genuinely true, though, Jonathan? Do you think that you could make a team full of really good players and they could not perform? Like, because you're saying that if the team is bad, then the players are bad.
Misfits?
Misfits. Okay, but don't you think you could make it? Don't you think you could make a team with good players and it still underperform?
Yeah, I mean, you could do that. Yeah, if it's not a great fit. Wait, I don't understand the question.
Well, my question is, you're kind of phrasing this like you think very highly of the individual pieces on Atlanta, and you want them to succeed for that to be validated, as if like if they failed, the players were bad.
I could even like it goes beyond that. Like I could even like see this core of players like work well together. It even goes beyond that. Like, I don't know how they're, coached and if that plays into it. But like, I look at this roster and I'm genuinely like, I feel good about the roster. So it's not even like the players individually, like, oh, Edison is so insane, or like, oh, Pelican is so insane. Kai, it's like, it goes beyond that to where I think that this is a good roster. Now, I'm not denying the poor results or the disappointments from last year. I'm not denying that. And I'm trying to take that into account when I make these judgments. But, I think last year was an underperformance relative to how good these players actually are. But then again, you're only as great as your last season, right? So I'm not claiming that, I guess I am claiming. I'm not stuck to this idea that like they're gods or like they still have the potential to be like MVPs and all of that. But I still think that they're a little bit better than they were last year. But I think it was a bad environment. And what I like this year is that they're down to 7 players on this squad, because last year it was like, oh, we have like 11 players and we're like flexing back and forth. Like some, remember the Atlanta Rain? It was like some maps Daco is going to play and some maps FRD is going to play. Oh, we have internal drama. The Fran doesn't feel well. It's all this back and forth bullshit about substitutions and, not being able to decide for a roster. What I like this year is they have 7 players. They know that they're capable of actually making like top 5 NA because they have the individual skill. They know that. They just need to get back to the whetstone, get better, practice, know that they have that potential to really flourish as this squad. And I genuinely think that they could be a decent roster in NA. But as we talked about, the coaching staff is not what we want it to be. We want there to be like an overarching kind of like structure to this team and like focus on individually improving them as well. A different mentality, I guess, is what we're searching for. But I'm stuck in this Atlanta Rain support group as a member. I would rate them a B- perhaps. Talking about NA.
To get to a score, Jesus Christ.
Matt, come on, man. You say this every episode. Say something original for once.
That's true, actually.
I was going to ask too.
Talk about the entire
whetstone?
league. Probably like +1. Isn't that like a whetstone, like when you grind your sharpen your knives?
Yeah.
Man's just like culture.
I never heard that.
They should be sharpening and grinding up their gameplay. And I really think that
Matt
with 7
uses scissors
players,
to
they're in a
cut
better environment to do so than years past. Siri, Jesus Christ, just when I'm talking.
What was that, Josh?
Matt uses safety scissors to cut everything. Like, the ones that are squiggly and they cut like a squiggly pattern.
The kid
into
ones.
things.
Yeah.
Like
I
when
can't
you
be
have
trusted
to,
with real scissors. Yeah.
When you have to like prep dinner or something. I don't know what you're allowed to prep. He wasn't allowed to prep raw chicken, was he? So I don't know. Like,
Matt wasn't allowed to cook anything.
Beef, I suppose.
Yeah.
Actually,
I
I remember when I came over for dinner once, you had one job, and it was mixing the festive drink. And you almost killed me. You sent me to an early grave. I was in the Uber home, and I had skipped the fun drunk part. I was just straight hanging. I was hungover in the car. I got a message from people saying, "Hey, you want to come out to K-Town?" And I remember looking at it like, "No, I'm already at Sunday." like I can't even answer this seriously.
We got a toaster, and I never had a toaster growing up. I never used the toaster, so I was like, "Yeah, get this." So the other morning,
go ahead.
I never had a toaster.
Never had a toaster. You've never seen a toaster. This is your first time in your life, in this chapter of your life. If you were to write a book, how old are you?
I'm 32. I never had a toaster. I didn't need one.
Okay.
So Chelsea got one.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, fuck it. I'm going to toast my bagel. See what happens. So I put the bagel in and it goes down, whatever.
It goes down.
Yep. Yeah. So it pops up. And I'm like, man, this shit doesn't look toasted. I was like, what do I got to do? So I flipped it on the other side and I pushed the button again and it went back down and it came out just was like black. I had just burnt this bagel to a crisp.
So
I still ate it because I felt bad, but
why you still ate it? That was the worst part.
Well, you just scrape off the charcoal.
No, I ain't got time for that. I
pretty sure that's bad for you.
I just watched Bren put charcoal in his nose that one time.
So you're telling me you don't know how to use a toaster?
Huh?
You don't know how to use a toaster?
I never had one. I had no idea. So I knew I hit the button and it goes down. Yeah.
Okay.
Everyone should immediately judge and change your perception of map moving forward.
Flip the bread around, change the sides.
Do you want to give us a rank or am I ending this episode?
Multi-sided device. I didn't realize.
Are you going to give us a rank or am I ending this episode?
Who?
You. What was his
I
rank?
already gave a rank. I said C.
He said C.
Okay, I didn't hear that. I didn't hear that. Sorry, that's my fault. I wasn't listening to
I just want to tell a story about my toaster.
God,
yeah, I mean,
God.
Leave us a comment if you have never had a toaster before, because I don't think that's a common occurrence. I feel like this is a Matt thing where Matt also uses an entire thing of shower gel in the bath.
Yeah, but also I think Matt doesn't need a toaster because he would always give the toaster. He would always give the bread to his butler, and his butler would roast it over an open fire.
Yes, the
and
open
give it back
fire.
to him. Yeah,
that's
I just
true.
had nothing. I don't like toasted bread. if I was getting a toasted bagel, I'd go out and get one. I just never had a toast. I don't know.
For people listening, this is why I don't give a shit about what Matt says to me, because it's not worth anything. This is why.
If
It's
you wanted
pointless.
something toasted, you would go out and buy one.
Well, no. Like if I wanted a toasted bagel, right? In New York, you don't like keep bagels in the house because like the shit store bagels. Like you go out and go get a bagel from the store. So you go get a
where do
bagel.
you
that's
think
You're
toasted.
so
bagel-
fucking privileged.
Where do
Unbelievable.
you think they get the store bagels from?
No, they make them, bro. They make them at the bagel shop.
They do make them.
They just
do
make them
But you know you can buy.
Yeah.
all the
But I
bagels.
can't make sourdough without being made fun of.
No, I think it's quite cool.
This is about the Atlanta Rain, yeah.
The point. Okay, I just gotta get this out here. You know you can buy the bagels from these establishments.
Yeah,
They
but
make
like
them
it's like an
for you.
event, right? Like you drive there, you get a coffee, you listen to sports radio, you drive back. Like it's an event, you know?
This guy is the most Long Island dude I ever fucking met in my life. It is unbelievable. We're ending the episode. If you're also from Long Island, I apologize to this man speaking on behalf of you. Leave a comment if you are. Does he speak for you? You let me know. Also let me know. Have you ever had a toaster? Have you never had a toaster? This is a concept I never thought we'd even be discussing on the show. I just thought.
What do you think
toasters-
about the Atlanta Rain as well?
Bro, I grew up in the fucking in the council estates of Gloucester, and I had a toaster. Like, how have you never had a toaster? That is,
They're ubiquitous. They're everywhere.
they are everywhere. They're cheap. You can get a toaster, and
We just got one like last week. We never had one.
End the show, please, Kurt. Please,
Kurt,
please,
I need a
please.
Fortnite dance.